Yep.
Um, Welcome to ProConnect June 2024. The topic for this month is smart buildings, and we're going to look at transforming how smart buildings are transforming the real estate landscape. To set the context, I just want to put in some facts about real estate. That real estate sector is the second largest in the world after agriculture. The Indian real estate sector actually contributes, about 6.5 to 7% to the GDP. So you can imagine the amount of the real estate power which we have, and it puts it into the building sector. As per the graph, by 2040, we are looking at a really good rise in the real estate market, be it in terms of residential or commercial market. So we're looking at growth up to 65,000 crores. And the India itself is looking at a trillion US dollars market up to 2030. So that's going to contribute at least about 13% of the country's GDP. So presently, the real estate in India is valued at about 24 lakhs crores. And we have a percentage about of 80-20 with respect to the commercial, with respect to the residential and commercial. Though the commercial may sound to be a very small sector, but it really contributes in terms of the energy efficiency and the other aspects of it with in comparison to the residential. When we talk about the energy efficiency, we are looking at in terms of smart buildings, high performance buildings. We're looking at net zero, all these aspects of it. And we have seen a gradual growth in the demand of smart buildings or these kind of high performance buildings, which is expected to grow because of the only fact that everybody is looking at energy efficiency in their building designs. You can see that the amount of energy efficiency and the correlation to carbon emissions. So when we look at the building sector, it is contributing overall about 40% of it, but the most of it comes from the operations, and the part of it comes from the materials and construction while construction of new buildings. So I think it is very important to look at the operation sides. And to look at operations, one needs to look through the entire life cycle. So that comes at the design stage where you really need to look at how you're designing the building, that you really can look at the efficiency and achieve that efficiency in the operation stage. So the solution is smart buildings, where we look at different aspects of envelope design. We look at system designs, and of course, now we're looking at smart building design, which is in terms of AI-driven smart systems, which will lead us to energy efficiency. So I can clearly say that smart buildings is a very futuristic solution which will help us in contributing to the reduction in environmental impact. So it is right to say that smart buildings could be a future for the real estate industry, and a lot of real estate groups are very consciously making efforts looking at this smart buildings and how automations and different additional technologies are adding into the entire design and the operation part of it. Today we have a very good panel discussion on this topic, and I would like to welcome three eminent panelists. We have Shamit Baumik,
Hi.
Mr. Matthew John, and
Hi.
Mr. Partha Kundu.
Hi.
Let me start with a brief introduction about all three of them. Samit is a mechanical engineer. He is the co-founder of Vera Tattva. He has more than 20 years of experience in the industry, and he specializes in system design, especially in high performance green buildings and MEP design, renewable design, and operation and maintenance management. Mr. Matthew John is founder of Intelligent Building Systems. It's a well-established organization providing consultancy services in the area of building management systems, HVAC automation, home automations. He comes with a wealth of experience of more than 24 years international and national, where he looks at integrated building management systems. Welcome, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you.
Our final panelist is Parth Kundu. He is a IIM graduate, and he is really a performance-driven leader who looks at strategic business planning and analysis, risk management, sales, and operation. He also has a lot of experience in the field of automation with special focus on HVAC system, which is related to building design and infrastructure. Welcome all of you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
am leaving one question to start off with all the panelists. It's a common question, so anyone can choose to step in first. How are smart buildings you feel are shaping the landscape of real estate development or investment in India? Maybe I can start with you, Samit.
Yes, thanks, Sandhya. Warm welcome to everyone else, Partha and Matthew as well. So I think I've been seeing a lot of action over the last maybe a year or so in this space, and I'm seeing more and more investment driven decisions being focused on operational data. So I'm seeing investors asking for operational data, trying to benchmark, assess, and compare between different facilities, trying to arrive at asset quality depending on the operational data. So I think this is here right now. The data coming out of operations, the smart buildings, is all becoming important now. Earlier, it was important for the operations of it, but now it's actually driving investment decisions. So this is a big change, a very recent change in my opinion, but I'm seeing this growing more and more in the years to come.
Thank you. Okay, let me start off with Matthew, sir. Can you address some concerns related to data privacy, automation, or cyber security, especially when we are designing smart buildings in real estate groups? So, from your experience, what do you feel? What would be the major concerns, and what's stopping the real estate groups to really stepping into smart building designs?
Yeah, thank you, Sandhya. As Samit told, there is a huge acceleration towards the real estate sector going for the smart building. Now, why it is happening is the smart building is seen as a differential factor, okay, because there is a heavy demand from the clients or occupants who wants their building to be more sustainable, more smarter. And there is also a differential factor where the builders are trying to differentiate their building from the others. So there is a race for becoming the smartest, as you call it. The definition of smart building itself, is a thing which people have different views. So that is something which is there. But the common denominator, I will say that smart means you have to be energy efficient, you have to be protective, you have to make life easier for the occupants. So when I look at in that perspective, a smart for a hotel may be different from smart for a hospital or for a retail sector. So smart should be, in my opinion, very closely connected to the operational aspect of the building. And smart also means the integrated feature of that building and the interoperability which you get into built into it. So these two factors is what makes it different from the standard building. Now, since you asked the question regarding data privacy and cyber security, now what it means, as you go smart building, you are integrating multiple subsystems. So there is a huge lot of data coming. Things which were in silos, now we are bringing together. You have got access control playing with CCTV with fire alarm with HVAC with lighting. So there is no more islands remaining. There is a merger of data, and everybody is coming with data with different format and different protocols, different systems, okay? And the functionality you want to merge. So the challenge is, as you have multiple subsystems coming and merging together, where you need to keep the functionality, but how do you keep a control? How you police the data which is going around and the vulnerability? So when you look at the hacking things, the ransomware, especially in building automation, it is going to be very prominent. There is an incidence of a hotel major where about 5 million, customer data has been taken. There's a huge possibility of a hospital data being hacked. So how do you face it? So what are the things we have to get into the new domain or the new smart building is one is data encryption, as everybody will be looking at data encryption in a more serious way. We have to also look at a auditing from a data perspective. There is a cybersecurity audit to become, and you have to realize that cybersecurity is a dynamic subject. So whatever you're talking about today may not be relevant, may not be that significant after 6 months. So you have to have a periodic data cybersecurity audit coming. So as consultants, we may have to incorporate it into our POQs. As system integrators, they may have to incorporate it as a feature for that. And what are the other tools? There is a need for a bigger awareness, and you have to make sure that the products and the systems you are coming together from top to bottom is foolproof. Means you cannot have a camera you select very weak in cybersecurity and you have got a very high video management system which is cyberproof, because you are prone to hack. So there is a total change in the approach you come. And when you have the subsystems coming together, there is each of the systems you need to make sure. So how do you do that? Some of the things is the vulnerability test. You need to conduct it. When you have the systems commission, you have to have a penetration test, which is, IT security. So overall, the security domain people should be involved in the commissioning and the building automation systems, which is again a change. And from there, once they hand over, the building owners or the facility managers also need to ensure that the guidance, the compliances are followed in a big way. So different tools are coming up, and I think building automation players, from designers to the system integrators and facility managers, start to use, and I think we have to use it more frequently, because after life safety, the data security threat, I believe, is the biggest and the most significant thing we have to address, and it is the most challenging thing. So there are different methods, so like network segmentation. You could go with VLANs. You can have mutual authentication, multiple authentications, things. So all this comes up, and all these practices we need to get used to it and familiarize, so that we take up the challenge of cybersecurity, which is a realistic one, and it is a very, very realistic thing. So things are happening, and continuously as we go for IoT and more open systems, and pushing data to cloud, how you are using it, how the compliance is made, all has to be, it's a very big topic, and we need to start educating our, also we have to make sure that it occupies a significant part in our design as well as implementation.
Well said, sir.
Okay.
Partha, sir, how do you think the real estate landscape is changing with respect to smart buildings? Your thoughts on
Yeah,
this?
thanks for asking this. But I think, see, real estate is not changing because they want to change. Everything is finally driven by economics, right? So what is happening is the demand is changing. The customers' demands are changing, the occupants are changing, and there is also some amount of regulatory and compliance requirements coming in. So the lens through which we see real estate, or how real estate used to be seen earlier, was primarily a first cost, and that is changing very rapidly. It has already, I think, in grade A properties has already changed. Grade B is it's knocking on it now. Grade B, grade C kind of stuff. In tier 1 areas, tier 2 areas, it is starting to happen. So people are trying to now look at not just the first cost, but also the operating cost. And the operating cost comes out of course, one is the operational efficiency, but people are also wanting to build something which gets absorbed faster in the real estate market, which would mean buildings which have green certifications, buildings which have better quality of air, buildings which have better water efficiency, and so on and so forth. So when you want to do bring in this kind of stuff, it is you can't just do that as ad hoc measures. You have to have something which kind of ties up things together. And when you want to tie it up together, you have to have a smart backbone, and which is the smart building backbone. And that is what is being, I think, rolled out everywhere. And but there is a significant shift, I guess, because see, smart buildings, or so to speak, what used to be called building management systems, used to be there even 20 years back. But what has changed now is I think they have become far more dynamic in terms of how they are applied and how relevant they stay throughout the life cycle. Because earlier you could have a lot of buildings which were built intelligent, but then they were left at that level of intelligence, you know. And also from this, there were no regular updates, no regular upgrades, no, cybersecurity threats were much lower these days, obviously. Even the connectivity was low. So we used to still generate a lot of data, but we were not really drawing insights from that data. So that has changed now. A lot of insights from that data is coming in, which is being pushed into operational efficiency. People are feeling better to work in those kind of places, which is also getting better rental yields for the for the real estate developers. So I think it's a complete cycle, and this is here to stay. It's not going anywhere away. It's going to get greater and greater acceptance, I feel, going forward.
Thank you. So it's quite clear that the real estate is changing purely because the demand for smart buildings have increased, and smart buildings have proven to be much more beneficial in terms of yielding, as you rightly said, cost value of the real estate, plus in terms of comfort levels, what the users are doing. So these are two important factors of taking away why is the real estate moving towards smart buildings. I'd like to come to you, Samit. What do you feel that any kind of regulatory frameworks or which are being evolving around the smart integration? You've been working with different types of real estate groups or even individual developers, what you're looking at. So, is there anything which you can share with us, which, on a regulatory side or a frameworks, which is getting updated and that is also strengthening the demand for smart buildings?
So frankly, Sandhya, I'm not seeing much of regulatory work happening around this space at all.
Okay.
Beyond the basic requirements of safety and all of those things. But I think this is changing dramatically right now, and as as governments start moving towards more data-driven policy decisions, I think this is going to change faster and more dramatically. SEBI is now, for example, asking for ESG declarations, and the kind of data that has to get into the declaration itself is impossible for someone to do it humanly. So organizations will now be pushed to, smarter technologies first to report, and then obviously to be able to do something about it. So it's not happened in a direct way, but I can see that that indirect pressure coming in. I think in the next 2-3 years, this is going to come in more and more. Like I said, but primarily first to report, and then definitely is going to move into a improve space as well.
That's really, I think that is the sector, or that is the section which I think the public sector or the central government or the state government really needs to pull out their socks to add to it, because initially all the demand has increased and the need for smart buildings is already set. Now is just putting up the policies in place so that everybody can seamlessly adapt it into their way of construction.
Right.
Matthew sir, and maybe Samit and even Partha sir, could you share some examples from your experiences of some projects where you felt that the smart buildings which you have actually developed it or constructed it, or gone through the operation of it, and you could share some thoughts from it or takeaways from it for the audience? Maybe Matthew sir, you can start off.
Yeah. So when you say smart buildings, you are bringing multiple subsystems together, right? So when you bring that things together, there are wonderful opportunities comes for really the design and implementation people to really put these IoT concepts into play. A simple thing I'm telling, you can use camera to detect people count. You can use camera to over suppose the access control system. You have got occupancy data which can go to HVAC, which can go to lighting as well as energy. Okay, so when you are bringing subsystems together, it's very important that the challenge is to make sure that the functionality you are able to achieve, at the same time you are able to integrate. So you don't want so many software and so many AMCs running together, but you need to have that merger coming together. So all smart buildings, if you have to implement correctly, I believe that there are three major concepts. One is, it's very important that the client set some priorities, because you have to driven by certain priorities. What is your energy, your efficiency, your productivity, whatever one few priorities. You should have a design and a teamwork and a very close coordination from architect, service builders with facility. And you should make sure that the smart building is used in a smart way. There's no point in having a smart building, which you earlier told. It is built smart, has got so many subsystems, but you don't know how to operate. And one thing we have to realize that Indian facility management is at a very low cost level. So we need to very rapidly change that understanding. If you got a IoT system implemented, you need IT guys, and we all know, compared to, when you bring that sort of a skill set, you need to ramp up your facilities in a very, you are talking about a combined command center where people know both BMS, and you can't assume that will happen overnight. So you need, our mindset of operating this thing has to dramatically change. This is where I see Indian buildings and Europe and US, there is a huge shift. You can design, and so that is a gradual evolution. So skill set development becomes very important. Okay, so I told about the systems bringing together functionality, saving the hardware cost, saving the cable by going wireless, being flexible, the cloud monitoring and the data equalization. All this means there is a lot of background work and things. So it cannot be achieved by one subsystem or one product. It is all bringing together. So you need to have a very good coordinated design and thought process, and a implementation also very sharply done, and then running of the building, which is 25 year. When you look at the life cycle, the design part or the implementation is only 1 or 2 years. You have got a 25-30 years to run it. So this is where and Indian buildings no more can say that cost is a limitation, because I believe our interior cost or per square feet costs have been very rapidly, but we still continue to be very, very stingy when you look at the services or automation. We talk a lot, we want everything, but you are not putting, you have to put money, you have to get the resources right. And until you don't do that, and some of the IoT systems you are talking about is a subscription model. So there is you are not the first cost, there may be a second cost, but you should be ready to prepare it. So once you take that innovation building, and some of the buildings which I have involved, there is some drastic technology changes. So you need to be prepared for it. ROI may not work out well, but down the line in the life cycle of the building, it will give you returns. It will give you sustainable returns and this thing. So you need a lot of leaders in this, smart building. Products are coming out, but sometimes we are in a flux to know what is the product which is the right fit. So I won't say that a product which you implemented in the hospital, you take it and just stamp it over to a hotel, which may not be the right fit for it. So you need to take the smart options coming in front of the customer, tailor it in a very well, and interoperability and integration to be done very well. So there is a lot of work, although we say that it is all like we have got automation, AI and data driven, but I believe people also brings the very big part. So we need to have a good team of people along with the architect and the clients working together to implement the smart building.
Project stories which you'd like to share, where you may have wanted a business as usual building, but just a presence of smart building technologies or integration of it really made a lot of difference, which you would like to share?
Yeah, a lot of places like, where you have got multiple HVAC systems, is working. Sometimes you may have, you can take a very simple example of the atmospheric temperature itself. The Bangalore climate may not demand what you need in Bombay or, Chennai. So most of our buildings, we go like a standard copy paste design. Probably not. You have to also remember that the the fundamental HVAC, electrical, lighting, acoustics has to be good. Smart buildings cannot afford to have only a cloud-based top end without any functionality. So remember one very significant thing: you have to provide them the comfort, you have to provide them the security and the productivity. So that you need to as a benchmark. So you have to superimpose on the basic services. So that I don't see in many places. I think we just jump into smart building something like a magic wand. It is not a magic wand. If your chilled water valve is not working, your chiller plant manager is inefficient, what you're talking about 55% your savings gone. Whatever you have got other 40 things, your chiller plant manager is at a very low efficiency and it is not integrated. And I see many of the places we do some fundamental mistakes, which completely takes out the advantage of the smart. So you have to realize you have to be all the fundamentals correct. You have to have a people and process into the people. So smart building is a lot more about people and process. And I think in process, I think in Indian buildings, we need to follow certain things as Parth told that it is economy driven. So when you try to do something new, you may have to spend a little bit more to achieve that. So you should not hesitate for that, because when you look at the overall cost scenario per square feet, it is less peanuts. So we should not say that it is not working because if you are not done or invested, so in the design and the allocation, I think the PMCs, cost consultants to support this smart building, not on seminars, but actually putting more money into there, because then it will happen, because you cannot have a magic happening.
Okay.
Could I
Thank
add
you.
something to that, Adrija?
Sure.
Is that out of my own personal experience in a building which is part of a large IT park in Bangalore, and that had been kind of built about 12, 13 years back. And but then they were having challenges. So tenants were unhappy because there was a lot of absenteeism, and now there is a large trend of people trying to get people back to work. Right? Everybody wants to work from home, and they were having challenges of people large amount of absenteeism, and hence people not wanting to come back to work. And these kind of challenges were when the building did not have the means of kind of checking what was going wrong, and then there was some amount of analytics which were put up, which was primarily a lot of crunching on the cloud, as well as seeing what is happening both downstream and upstream, where the client was able to kind of understand what was fundamentally going wrong and get them fixed, because a lot of parameters shift, drift over a period. 10 years is a long time, right? I mean, you might have built smart 10 years back, but as Matthew said, unless you invest in making sure that your building stays that way and also gets upgraded, updated, people are operating in it that way, it doesn't stay that way. So coming back to this, I think those kind of interferences, even for an existing building, because while everybody talks about new buildings, but there is a lot that you can do even for existing building. All hope is not lost for existing buildings. You don't have to break them down to build new ones today. So you can actually make the shift to a technologically advanced new building, which is still attractive to customers and to tenants when you're in the right places as well, using smart buildings. So that's very much possible and is being done in various parts of the world.
Thank you. Sumit, over to you. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of my clients are actually owners. So, smart technology is leading to better or more efficient operation and leading to, lower cost of operation. So that's a simple value add, which I think is there for everyone to take. But I think there's a very unique thing which I have found in my experience also making a difference, and that is the data that the performance data that comes out of a very well monitored facility. Now, I think this is a great marketing tool. Speaks better than any certification, than and any kind of marketing pitch. And I certainly know that at least one of my clients, a very large IT firm, who used this to differentiate themselves from the competition. So while we have the usual operating benefits, I think there's a huge opportunity to market very well monitored facilities. So I think that's my that's been my experience around this.
Great. So did you have any clients who were hesitant to step into smart building designs, and you were able to convert them to move towards this kind of approach in designs, in your system designs or any of aspects of the building design?
So for some reason, at least the clients I have worked with, I've never had to do that. I think
Oh,
most of them
lovely.
were already sold to the idea of doing it. But I think the essence of what Partha, Matthew were all saying, that I think there is a lot of interest in it. The reality of it is something which is yet to be mapped to the interest levels. I think that's the area which we all need to focus on. But otherwise, I think most at least commercial real estate owners, hotels, IT complexes, I think today I don't think any one of us will have to tell them about smart building and the necessity to integrate that into infrastructure. I think the challenge really is how do we implement it in the right way.
So typically any kind of a building, we are looking at an integrated design approach, and smart buildings or high performance buildings, which look at these kind of additional technologies or which are driven by them. They generally have all the stakeholders collaborated to it. So could you discuss about any kind of a role, what you think architects or clients themselves, contractors, vendors, or any other stakeholders in the real estate area, what role you feel could enhance, or their responsibilities which would really make this transition a little more smoother?
So in smart buildings, building automation, and my experience has been this, that all of this happened very late, and luckily for about in the last 4 or 5 years, we've at least started getting engineering services, upfront when the designs have been discussed and been developed. But smart infrastructure, smart buildings, the technologies which are to be developed or decided on, even the vendors come in very late. So by the time the vendors come in, usually a lot of the work has been done. So whatever we started off with is usually not achieved. So I have seen projects where sensors have been installed and the wiring couldn't be done because there was no space available for it. I've seen projects where sensors have been installed, the wiring has been done, but they've been kept in the wrong place because there was no place available for it. So when all of these things happen, we start losing confidence on the information that comes out of such a building. I think while we're talking about smart buildings and automation of some processes is all there, a definite trend, and as we move into the future, I realize that the data coming out of such buildings is also going to be useful to drive decisions, right? And when you want data, to drive decisions, you want to make sure that the data is right, right? In order to get the data right, you want to make sure the implementation is right. And in order to get the implementation right, you have to do the planning right. So it all comes back to the team which started all of this and made the mess. So it is the architects, it is the PMCs which Matthew was talking about. It's all of the developers who have to really start understanding that this has to be done early. Space has to be left. If there's no physical space left for all of these things, and we just wish for a very smart building, we're only going to get a smart building with no use. Right. So there's a lot, which engineers and architects can do. And I think the big, the really important thing is to first understand that this data is going to drive decisions in future. And therefore, this is a very important part of, building design itself. Right. And therefore, you start getting these vendors in, the consultants in, the designers in very early in the design process. Only when we have the infrastructure ready, space available, and the intent and the plan there to bring to make sure that the smartness is built in and in a way in which that can be operated continuously, is when we get a smart building, and that the data from that building starts becoming very useful in future. And I think that's the part where it has been, we've missed it out, and definitely there's a big scope of improvement in this area.
Very well said. I completely agree with you that it comes as an add-on.
Yeah.
It is not integrated right in the entire life cycle of the project design work.
Yeah.
Mr. Pasa, I'll come to you. What do you think now on this last note or this thing? How do you think the designs need to be flexible to adapt these kind of technologies right at the beginning of it, so we can have a better impact in the output of these projects?
So I would talk about two parts actually. One is, of course, starting up with, like how Samit said about, uh, it's not that you slap on smartness onto a building or to a design right at the midway or halfway or somewhere at the end of the project, I mean, you have to have that in mind, right? The intent, and have everything kind of, because it's like weaving in everything at the right place at the right time so that it flows smoothly. Second thing is also, I mean, in terms of keeping it smart through the life cycle of the because buildings today are easily built for 30, 40 years, of useful existence. And to make sure that the buildings stay smart, because smartness in definition itself is changing so much. I mean, today you have, AI knocking on everything. I mean, knocking the doors of everything. So much coming in, so much changing, and so much that we don't know what's going to happen, day after tomorrow. So so building a building, when you're building today, what will remain smart for the next 30, 40 years, it's very difficult. It's like gazing into a crystal ball. So all that we can do is, I think, do certain basics right, follow the SOPs, as I think Matthew was also saying right at the beginning, is just, making sure that the process that we follow is right. And there we make sure that the infrastructure that we build is modular and scalable. It's not built around one specific manufacturer's solutions, or to make sure that it is so, I mean, so cost optimized in the first cost that it cannot be expanded or, scaled up when you want to. So that's one part. I think also making sure that you follow the right open protocols. So I think, because that's very key, because I think the age today is of interoperability, and more so going forward, because what's going to be more important going forward is not the softwares which probably lie on premise. It's going to be a lot more coming which on the cloud. So it's also the ability to kind of transition from one legacy kind of equipment to something which is, able to work with newer equipment, which is probably either on the top or at the bottom at a different layer. So for that you need a high level of interoperability. So making sure that you follow the right open protocols, which are internationally acceptable. That's infrastructure is again very important. So there, I would say the cybersecurity, a lot of old buildings, or like even 2, 3 years and other stuff, are not really updated. The hardware is not updated, the softwares are not updated, so they kind of crash at times. They're not able to work seamlessly with other systems. So making sure those are kind of updated, upgraded, and all that as things go along. And I think the third and the last point that I would talk about, which is not the least but a very, very important part of it, is the system stays user centric, because everything that you do has to have the user at the center of everything. Of all thoughts that go into it, the strategies of execution which go into it, and of course that how it operates. So making sure that the user stays at the center of things, making sure that you adapt and evolve. Not just, you can't just say that, okay, no, this was built this way, or this is how it was supposed to be operating, but it kind of evolves with the users. I mean, as users change, their requirements evolve. So the smartness of the building allows it to kind of make sure that those kind of adjustments and changes are possible. So I think these are very key important points to make sure that your building stays smart for the life cycle of the building.
Drivers for the smart buildings in the real estate group, as all of you have pointed out, that there is a need because the user is educated in understanding what is smart buildings or the need of it. If it's a real estate group, or as what Samit said, an individual developer from any sector, they are aware the benefits of a smart building. So there is a need for it to drive into the market. Mr. Matthew said that there is money, so the cost aspect is also taken care of really budgeting, or if a project has low budget and you cannot incorporate it. Of course, we have a little space left where we needs development in terms of regulations. Um, on the project front, is that it needs to be integrated right at the beginning of it, from the project starting inception to right up to this thing, completion of it. Uh, there's one thing which I'd like to ask all of you all. You feel any kind of other key drivers which would actually push this whole aspect of smart buildings? Starting with you, Samit, you've been working in the field of MEP design in so much. You have been on the side of the design part of also and also the O&M. System designs, HVAC designs play a very important role in energy efficiency. That's very important. Could you want to add a few things which you feel which should be really important, which will be contributing to the overall smartness of a building? Some pointers just to conclude our conversation today. You're on mute. Samit.
Sorry. So, so if I look at the buildings I've been working on over the last 4, 5 years, 6 years now, the buildings have started becoming more and more complex. We have some very, very tall buildings being built now, very complex buildings being built now. So it's now just not possible to operate them with people. You need systems, you need automation to, operate them well. And we don't have skilled manpower at all. I'm not sure if everyone agrees, but I'm seeing this across industries, definitely in the building space, that we just don't have skilled manpower to operate these buildings anymore. So the need to automate will continue to improve and continue to drive the move towards integrating such automation systems into the building. But as systems become more automated, you're going to have a lot of data thrown out of those systems, and it's just humanly impossible to analyze that data. And I think that's a great space that is opening up, data coming in, and I think technologies which will start analyzing and then advising, I think is going to be in for the next 10, 15 years. I'm a very I myself am working in this space last couple of years or so. There's going to be a tremendous movement towards those areas. So both these things, I think the need to sort of automate, the need to study data, analyze data, and of course, I talked about it earlier, the need to report. And that's going to also sort of drive the adoption, because all of this is just not humanly possible. The scale is just too big. So that's what I think, will be driving, we're going to see more and more smart buildings, no doubt about it.
That's you, sir. Do you?
Yeah, I just want to sum up. Everybody wants smart building. It is very nice to see the analytics coming up, which Samit told. Fantastic analytics. It is the tangible. It's the deliverables people are talking. No more people are talking about this BMS or that. It's the deliverables I want to see and this thing. So cost is one limitation. We definitely need to look very good upward spiral, because in all aspects, I'm talking about the system integrated level, design level, operation level. You need to
do you feel the real estate group are working on this cost aspect regularly?
When you talk about for the smart systems, the interest and the action part is not there. So you need to, so the cost, that's why I told cost consultants and as well as PMCs need to allocate. Now, another point which is a hindrance I see in smart building is the time. You will force the system integrators where there is a complex integration which needs the thought process. You may need a 4 weeks or a 6 weeks. You squeeze it into 4 days, you're not going to get the result. And why we are losing the time, the timing is not correct. We have to select and design a little bit early, and you have to allow the implementation to happen. So you are not designing in the implementation stage. If you push the design to the implementation stage, your execution will be poor. This is the standard. This is where, again, I think the Western world is miles ahead of us. There is a design phase, there is an implementation phase. Don't remember the commissioning of a smart building is tough. So the timing thing you have to get. So cost is one. Second is the timing. You have to take a good decision at the earlier. There should be a good driver from the client, because as you go for this IoT and the smart building, there are a lot of clashes and somebody has to take a call. So I still see in some of the places you don't have a driver. There is a goal for that building, you have to go. And then we have to implement the process. So once you have this, you're going to get fantastic, data analytic one. And then we move into a, where the artificial intelligence will take over. You don't need all the cloud-based data analytic things and all that will take over. But you need a clean data and a ground level good system to implement. You cannot jump into that without having. So cost, timing, process. Let us get that things, then everybody will be enjoying the benefits of the smart building, and it will in turn give cost benefits. Okay, don't forget that in the long run it will give profit if your data is good. If your data is good, your self-adapting system will take and dump your analytics in with fantastic insights which will help you. But you need to get these fundamentals right. I think these three aspects: cost, timing, process, we need to get. And we are all the stakeholders has to really look at it. Am I doing a chair for this and I want a smart building than a brick or a marble? You know, how much you proportionate you see. Because I know the budgets we give for interiors is, you know, compared to the smart building. And we want smart building. You cannot have smart building without allocating the right resources. So this is, and the skill, which Samit told, we are slightly under par in the skill set. That so skill development is also a very big part across the board in the industry. So once you do these four things, we should have smart building. I think Indian buildings are going in the right direction. Last 25 years, I'm seeing we are going in the right direction, but these corrections are little bit hard corrections, but we need to take it. But we cannot expect the intelligence to come from a just like a button or something and it will come like artificially. It is not so. So that is where you need to, you know, people all across the board need to be aware of.
Thank you. Partha sir, would you like to add something?
I think for me two standout points are: one is allocating the right cost, because I look at it more like an iceberg. And when people look at the cost, they look at the first cost and they look at the tip of the iceberg. They don't look at the large 80% down below the water, which is the operating cost. And I think once developers get to see that, realize that, and then make sure that they invest right for the first cost, so that the balance hidden part, which is the operating cost over the lifetime of the building, is taken care of, or rather reduced, because of the right kind of investments made in the smart building. So that's one point that I wanted to talk about, and make people, I mean everybody, including architects and other stakeholders, aligned to that. That look, I mean, you can only get as good as you can design for the best, but then you need to kind of make sure that you put the right cost for it. So that's one piece. Second piece that I would talk about is, yes, I mean, as this domain explodes, I would say there is going to be a even further skill shortage, and that's not going to go away. So the only way, probably, apart from developing, we can and we must do skill development. But I think that the other angle is to have systems in place which will actually make sense of the flood of data that comes in, because we are already flooded with data. We don't know what to do with data. There are a lot of people who don't even want to look at it because they don't know how to make sense of it. So this space of what to do with the data and how to analyze the data, how to make sense out of it. How do you kind of, one is of course reduce energy consumption and optimize emitted carbon by reducing consumption, optimize water efficiency and stuff like that is one piece. Also moving away from reactive kind of maintenance to predictive maintenance and stuff like that, bringing out the avoided cost which could have happened with a failure. So those kind of things can happen only when you kind of analyze that data. So big data, AI, ML, I think happening on that piece, giving then a summarized action point to the field team. The field team will not become very intelligent suddenly, I mean, but all that you can do is make their work easier, telling them that these are the prioritized kind of action points depending on what you see out of the data, in terms of after analyzing the data, which happens in the background on the cloud probably, and then comes back to the building. So I think that's the space which I see growing much more very rapidly going forward for the smart buildings.
Great, thank you. I look at two important aspects which I've learned from this conversation today. Is what Samit said was very right, that we have so much of data, and humanly actually analyzing data is difficult. So data analysis of a building itself, as all of you have said, is a very important aspect, and that is actually going to be a key driver to any kind of a real estate group or any kind of a user or a developer, that he analyzes his own data to give confidence and be a key driver for his next project, because that only will give him enough power to really take those steps ahead. Otherwise, we all as a consultants are there to give inputs, but his own data will actually help him to move towards this. Thank you so much for all of your time, and it was wonderful to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
Sandhya.
Pleasure
Thank you,
being
Sandhya.
here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matthew,
Thank you.
Partha, everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so much.
Partha.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.